Welcome back to The Bible is Art, where we explore the literary artistry of the Bible. And in this week, we're talking about the end of John's Gospel and its allusions to the first chapters in the Bible. This is what the almost last few verses in John's Gospel say. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back against him during the supper and had said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me." Now, this is a bit of a strange scene on which to close the gospel. Why this back and forth discussion about John? Well, as we saw in the last video, John is showing that Jesus is remaking the world. In the beginning of this chapter, he brings the 7 disciples, symbolic of the new humanity, through the baptismal waters to a new land, into a new garden. The fire that was on the sword of the cherubim guarding the entrance to the garden in Genesis 3 has now become an instrument of feasting, cooking the fish for consumption. And continuing with this new creational theme, John will show us that Jesus will reverse the first 2 sins in Genesis. This new creation will be unlike the old creation. Let me show you how it works. So, the first sin in Genesis has to do with preemptive eating, and the second sin has to do with a conflict between brothers. So, here's how it works out. After they enter into this land across the water in John 21, the main action that takes place is eating. But this time, in this new creation, there are no restrictions, unlike in the first garden. They feast with the God-man. This is sanctified feasting. That is, it's a reversal of the first sin. The reversal of the second sin comes in the last scene where the disciples are walking on a path. And in this last strange scene, you have a hint of conflict between Peter and the favored disciple, just like Abel's sacrifice was favored by God and not Cain's. Peter asked Jesus about John's inclusion in the group of disciples, sort of suspicious of him. And Jesus instructs Peter to not worry about that disciple and to focus on following Jesus himself. Precisely what Cain needed to do. Not worry about Abel's relationship to God, but focus on following God himself. In the original Cain and Abel story, there was a word about brothers. Do you remember what it said? Abel's blood was crying from the ground. And John tells us that a word went out among the brothers here in our text. Jesus tells Peter that if it is his will that John remain, what is that to Peter? And because of this, in verse 23, tells us that a word was spread abroad among the brothers about John and his remaining. Now, it's a little bit complicated, but for our purposes, it's fairly simple. This time, this word didn't have to do with death, like with Cain and Abel, but with life. Jesus talking about John's remaining. So unlike Cain and Abel, the word that goes out is not about the death of a brother, but about the life of a brother. So, Jesus not only brings humanity into his new creation, but also reverses those primal stains and infractions, healing them so that the new world would be filled with light and life. And that, my friends, is why the Bible is art. thank you so much for checking out the video this week. I really appreciate it. This is a bit of a continuation of last week's video on John 21, so if you haven't seen that, this will probably make a little bit more sense. If you would like to support this channel, that would be lovely. You can do that at patreon.com/thebibleisart, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.